Well, okay. It's a little bit of a late start, but better late than never. So we are on lesson 108 of the workbook of A Course in Miracles. To give and to receive are one in truth. I think if I were to say, let me see, how would I put this? I think conceptually, this may be one of the harder lessons to grasp, and certainly requires the practice as an activity in order to get a full understanding, as well as see the ability for this lesson and the action of mind and heart that are not mere concepts, but result in a way of living and being in this world that is totally unlike the ego in all regards, and in a sense is the opposite of what the ego actually is in every single way. This is the one lesson that if you can begin to practice in your activities, in any one area of your life, actually, in any one area of your life, if you just trust this lesson enough to begin to practice it in your daily sort of ritual of mundane life, it will bring about a massive change in understanding and open the door to the experience of the true abundance of creation that you were created to share in and extend as well. It is very, very hard for the ego to tolerate the action. When Jesus says miracles induce action, and this is a lesson that can induce miraculous action because it is a way of beginning to recognize that we all do share oneself, and we can only give to that oneself, and that oneself is the self of God creating, and is the way that life in the kingdom as a soul is actually experienced and will actually become to known when time does pass into eternity. Because the truth is, as this says, this one concept unifies the entire mistaken thought system into a single action of mind, wherein which everything that is received is likewise given. And while here that seems to be a simultaneous activity, in reality there's actually it's total, whole, perfect, and is the unifying activity of creation that brings about the ability for us to extend reality as God created the reality for us to extend, and us as his extension of that reality as the reality of its extension, and the reality of us to be creators with him. Vision depends upon today's idea. To give and receive is our one in truth. Vision depends on today's idea. The light is in it. The light is in today's idea. The light is in today's idea. This idea is now in your mind. So the light is now in your mind. I will also say that the ego, which loves to interpret and do A Course in Miracles, rather than allow you the experience of what the practice of A Course in Miracles is attempting to bring to you at the recognition of who you are beyond the ego, and without the necessity to consider the ego's dictates. The ego will want to interpret this lesson on its behalf, in its benefit, to preserve its ability to maintain existence and to keep you locked within the prison that it helps us manufacture for ourselves, so that we cannot get beyond concepts and attempt to conceptually recognize or think we understand the course, because somehow the ego interprets the concepts and makes those interpretations tolerable to you in order for you to tolerate its continual dictates and need-oriented thinking. The light is in it, for it reconciles all seeming opposites. And what is light except resolution of all your concepts, born of peace? It's resolution. Light is resolution of all your concepts and mistaken thoughts into one concept, which is wholly true. It's interesting. I have friends who were early on part of the est movement, and Warner Earhart was said to have been looking for a concept that was large enough to encompass all concepts. And in that sense, he wasn't far off in the idea that there was one, but he was very far off in the purpose of the utilization of that concept, and the reason why it is true that, as this says, and what is light except resolution, born of peace, of all your concepts and mistaken thoughts into one concept, which is wholly true. And here's the idea that even that one will disappear, because the truth behind it will appear instead to take its place. And that's an extension of yesterday's lesson that says the truth will correct all errors of my mind, of our mind. So as you can see, there's ways in which Jesus is linking these lessons through the utilization of the truth of this one, in order to bring about a resolution, so that all your mistakes are corrected by a single action of correction. And as we get deeper into the lesson, you'll understand exactly what I'm saying. And as I read this lesson today, it really is a true thing. The idea that you can forgive one brother wholly is the idea that you have forgiven all brothers in its totality. And when that forgiveness comes, you may not yet recognize that you've forgiven the world and forgiven in its totality, but the forgiveness that you experience in that instant is what you'll be utilizing as the light, the experience of the light that you do experience in that instant is the light that you will be utilizing in order to unify your entire mind, to take it from living in a condition of dualistic opposition to understanding that there's no opposition in oneness, and you've only always lived in oneness. And the pain that we experience, there's a line in the Course that talks about the idea that the Holy Spirit, in a particular sense, causes the discomfort, because the necessity for your mind and heart to integrate the truth of who you are is what the ego is resisting. And every time you utilize the unifying concepts, the unifying activity of the light that is in this idea, the ego will attempt to rear its ugly head to show you that something's going to go wrong and you are going to lose and you are going to be bereft. And yet, the benefits and the joy that comes from the experience of recognizing this in any single instant and utilizing what you recognized in that instant as and generalizing it to all instances in space and time by utilizing the self-same action of mind will eliminate the ego's ability to offer you resistance, because in the condition of oneness, the idea that you would want to be another way simply is not there, because all the joy that you experience eliminates the suffering and the resistance and the pain from the resistance that is brought about from the ego's attempt to co-opt you and disrupt you and distract you from the unifying process that comes about in a generalization of the utilization of what we glean in this lesson as the truth of our eternal reality and the ability to live in the abundance of the kingdom. Even this one will disappear because the thought behind it will appear. When he says thought, it's a capital T, meaning that's the divine thought. That's the real thought. That is the thought that we are created as. That is the thought that, and this perhaps is one of the hardest things to understand, that is the thought that arose in the eternal and infinite nature of the abundance of our Creator to share His self with us as that single self. Our arising as a thought in the mind of God arose in eternity, arose as in infinity, and we are an extension of that idea as the idea itself in its own likeness, and let's call it spirit, and similar in divine nature. We share the divine nature of God. He shares that with us. We share it with Him. And in the utilization of this idea to give and receive our one in truth, we extend the kingdom and allow no room at all for any idea of separation, because it is a unifying principle. True light, which makes vision possible, is not the light the body's eyes behold. It is a state of mind which has become so unified that darkness cannot be perceived at all, and thus what is the same is seen as one, while what is not the same remains unnoticed, for it is not there. This is the light which shows no opposite, and vision, being healed, has the power to heal. Why would it have the power to heal? Because you are not separate from what is being healed and the healing that is taking place, because you're not separate from anything any longer. And the fragmentation that took place in the instant when we remembered not to laugh at the tiny mad idea is what this is unifying. It's reunifying the self that was fragmented into millions and millions of little pieces, wherein which we could no longer recognize ourselves, except when we got into the essential, which allows each piece to be part of the hologram and demonstrate its oneness with each and every other piece, not in the form association that the piece seems to share, but in the peace of God that we all are sharing in as our mind becomes unified, and nothing is allowed to be left out of that, because the integrity of your mind, the integrity of who you are, forget your mind, the integrity of who you are as God created you cannot stand anything less than the totality and the perfection of its own reality. And that is what exerts pressure on the membrane of separation, which is the body that we're utilizing as a vehicle of communication to both learn of our own oneness and learn how in each and every situation the generalization of that oneness in the ability to bless, which is inclusion of our brother into our own reality, because nothing is separate from reality, begins the healing process of your own mistaken concepts, as well as the healing process of the mistaken concepts your brother may be utilizing, because they are not separate. And you can begin to understand who your brother is behind his misperceptions of separation, in the recognition that you and he are already one, and the mind that he is utilizing is both mistaken the same way and both healed in the same manner, to give and receive our one in truth. Here, both giving and receiving are seen as different aspects of one thought whose truth does not depend on which is seen first. That's why this works. You could recognize this in the receiving as the ability of giving, or you can learn it through the giving in the willingness to receive that which was given to give. That may be a little messy conceptually, because this goes way beyond concepts. It is, in a sense, the activity of infinity. It is, in a sense, the reality of eternity. The activity of the infinite ability of your mind to live in the abundance of the eternal nature of life and love as being who we are, what we are, and as we were created. Here are both giving and receiving seen as different aspects of one thought whose truth does not depend on which is seen as first, nor which appears to be in the second place. Here it is understood that both occur together, that the thought remains complete. Both occur together so that the thought remains complete. We think of it as simultaneous in a sense. That's why we look at the action of infinity as a whole and perfect action rather than a continuation, a continual action in time in a sense. And is understood. And in this understanding is the base of the base on which all opposites are reconciled, because they are perceived from the same frame of reference, which unifies this thought. One thought, here we go. One thought, completely unified, will serve to unify all thought. This is the same as saying one correction will suffice for all correction, because there's one problem and there's one solution, and no matter what form we view the problem in, the solution is always the same, and the form is merely reflective of the one problem, because we did not have a myriad of problems with God. We had one problem in reality. We've remembered not to laugh at the idea of separation, and we're living in let's call it, the duplication of that thought into myriad form associations through fragmentation of the consciousness, when it lost its ability to recognize who it was, and we fell to pieces and began to cry. This is the same as saying one correction will suffice for all correction, or that to forgive one brother wholly is enough to bring salvation to all minds. For these are but special cases of one law which holds for every kind of learning, if it be directed by the one who knows. That's the key. If this be directed by the one who knows, rather than co-opted by the ego in its attempt to survive and offer you a conceptual idea that does not allow you to utilize this as an activity of your mind and heart in your daily mundane existence. To learn that giving and receiving are the same has special usefulness, because it can be tried so easily and seen as true. And when this special case has proved it always works, in every circumstance where it is tried, the thought behind it can be generalized to other areas of doubt and double vision, and from there it will extend and finally arrive at the one thought which underlies them all. To give and to receive are one in truth. I will receive what I am giving right now.